Hey guys, I wanted to start off just introducing some supplies and ways that we'll use those supplies in advanced drawing. So to start with, you'll have a charcoal pencil, and you can see that this charcoal pencil is broken. So what I'm going to be doing in this video is just sharpening this charcoal pencil and showing you the proper way to do that. A lot of times you don't want to sharpen a charcoal pencil with like an electric pencil sharpener, or even sometimes a small handheld pencil sharpener, because the charcoal tip is so soft that a lot of times it will break, and you'll just keep sharpening it, and keep sharpening it, and it'll keep breaking, and eventually you'll just kind of wear the pencil down, and you'll waste a lot of the pencil and the charcoal. So way around that is, as you can see, what I'm doing here is using just a knife, an X-Acto knife or a pocket knife or something with a good blade on it. And when you do this with a knife, what you'll want to do is to make this tip a lot longer than what you would get with a standard pencil sharpener. So instead of that nice, neat little tip that you might get from a pencil sharpener, you're going to want to make this tip 3 or 4 times longer, probably, than what you would normally see, what you're accustomed to seeing with a number 2 pencil. So you want to make a nice long tip. Start far back on the wood, expose plenty of the black charcoal. Once you get to the charcoal, you have to lessen the pressure a little bit so that you don't break that charcoal. And then what you see here is that you'll start using the sandpaper, and you'll just rotate the pencil around and roll it on the sandpaper. And as you do that, it's going to refine that tip a little bit. So you don't have to get it all the way to a point using your knife. Get it pretty close to being a point with your knife, and then use those little strips of sandpaper to help finish that off and refine the tip. Another tip is to use a side grip when holding the pencil. If you press down like a writing grip, then that tip will wear out really quickly. Whereas if you hold your pencil almost parallel to the page when you draw, then it's going to maintain that tip a lot longer, and you're not going to have to keep doing what I'm doing right now. I'm having to resharpen it because I wrote with it using the tip. So if instead you'll use a side grip, kind of lay your pencil almost parallel to the page, and just use a nice soft touch when you draw, it's going to maintain that tip and actually even sharpen the tip. It's going to continually sharpen as you use it that way. So that's just another little tip to save you time and effort. So here we have the charcoal powder or charcoal pigment. This is just charcoal that's been ground into a fine dust. You're going to use this painting brush. It's a watercolor brush, so it's got nice soft bristles at the tip. Or you can use something like a finger to apply a charcoal pigment. Just the oils on your hand will pick it up and help you smudge it around. Depending on what method you use, you can do a couple different things with this. With the brush, you can make some really nice atmospheric effects, or you can make some really nice like stormy or cloudy effects with the brush. Whereas if you use your hand or your finger, you're just able to kind of apply areas of value that you can kind of smudge and blend. So I'll show you both of those things. I'll start with the brush, and we'll just do something that's kind of a cloudy effect. So you'll see I dip the brush in the charcoal powder, but then I tap it off just kind of on the lip of the container, just so that I'm not putting down too much powder at a time. What I want is a really soft effect, so I don't want to pick up a ton of charcoal each time that I go back for more. This area, I'm trying to make this area of this cloudy shape darker than the top, right? You might have a shadow on the bottom of the cloud, so I'm applying more charcoal and reapplying it to the bottom part of this cloud, and kind of as the cloud feathers out, I'm using less charcoal there. So as the brush starts to run out of charcoal, that's when I start to go for these lighter areas.
I love
So you can see I was able to pretty quickly and easily come up with a pretty nice kind of cloudy effect if I was going to do like a landscape or something with a stormy sky or something like that in my drawing. And I didn't use a pencil at all. I didn't use any lines at all. This was just applying value with the brush. So now I'm going to show you applying that same kind of value with your finger and just kind of putting down some areas of value to start to create an image. Again, here I'm identifying some areas that I want to get a little darker, right? So I'm reapplying some of this charcoal pigment to these areas that I want it to be a little darker. Those areas that I want to keep lighter, I wait until most of the charcoal pigment is worn off of my finger, and then I'll go back to those areas to apply some light value to an area. Really, what I'm focusing on when I draw this way or create an image using a technique like this is simply the area of shadow or the shape of shadow and the shape of light. That's what I'm thinking about. Not so much the shape of the subject as the shape of the shadows or the highlights on that subject. And now I start to go in with the pencil to kind of refine some of this and provide a little detail, right, and a little more of a hint of what's actually being made here. And so the pencil still can be necessary, right, to actually bring the image together. But using that pure charcoal pigment was a really quick way to just kind of get down some of these shadow shapes in the shape of this form that I'm continuing to draw, but now with the pencil. An exercise like this can be really valuable in just kind of showing us that when we draw, like, everything doesn't have to be outlined. That's not the only way to draw things, right? We can start with shadows. We can just start with value and then erasing highlights out of value. There's a lot of different ways that form can be conveyed, and I would even argue that line isn't the best way to convey that form that value actually is. And so that's kind of what this is meant to illustrate, right? Is that you can make an image, really, you can lay out the base of that image without using a single line. right? It was just kind of smudge marks of value that I started with. And then you can start to fill in some things with lines. But I would prefer, and I think your work looks more mature when you begin with value and then you end with line rather than the other way around.